live. We're back live with the Young Jurks. My name is Mike Crawford. I'm the host. We have a new guest for the second half of the show here, but I just want to make sure I mention a couple things. Number one, as I mentioned earlier, we're very happy that we're going to be broadcasting live from the New England Cannabis Convention. It's their 2019 Boston event. Disrupt Boston is the official media partner of NECAN Boston, providing wall-to-wall coverage of the show, and the Young Jurks will be the network's featured broadcast of the weekend. We can't wait. I'll be there. It's Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, March 22nd or 24th. Disrupt Boston will be there all weekend. I'm not sure exactly when I'll be there, but I will be there, and I will be broadcasting live, so hope to see you there. Check it out. We're also nominated for 2 NECAN awards. Vote for us. Check out their website, NECAN. Very happy to have someone on the show that I've had on in the past. He's a friend of the show. Haven't seen him in a while. He's what do we call him this? An equity applicant? What's the right word?
So the state goes by economic empowerment applicant.
Thank you. Economic empowerment. That's what I was looking for.
EEA. EEA makes
You're
it a little bit easier.
economic empowerment applicant for cannabis in the city of Worcester.
Correct.
And your name is Ross Bradshaw.
Yes, correct.
Welcome back to the show.
Yeah, it's been a while.
It has been.
It's been a couple of years. Yeah, it was probably right before I took off to Colorado.
You were part of the show, and you moved out west with Holly and Steve for Healthy Heady lifestyle, and you were working on that for a while, and now you're back, and now you're an economic empowerment applicant for cannabis in the city of Worcester, and you just got a huge story about everything that you're doing and what you're up against. What was the outlet that ran that story?
The Worcester Business Journal.
Very good story.
Yeah, it was very good. Not just about Worcester, but overall what's going on in Massachusetts.
Without the state.
Yeah.
Throughout the state.
And, you know, what I'm going through in Worcester is the struggles I think a lot of folks are facing right now throughout the state.
Oops, sorry. Sorry. Clumsy.
No worries.
It's funny, too. I always feel like kind of rude looking at the phone, but I kind of have to. I have to keep up with what's going on the show and make sure that we're broadcasting right and seeing if there's any feedback from what we're doing here.
Of course. So I can give you a little bit of background on that story, too.
Go ahead.
So about a year ago, well, even before that, after the SLN4 ballot initiative passed, I started working on this issue of equity in Massachusetts with a number of other advocates. So right now, I'm a board of director on Equitable Opportunities Now. They're one of the few not-for-profits.
Is this in Worcester? Oh, this is a nonprofit.
No, yep, it's a nonprofit. So it was founded by Chanel Lindsay and Shailene Title.
Okay,
and
you know them.
Yeah, great people. And so that nonprofit is focused on providing opportunities and ownership for folks that are looking to break into this marijuana industry. And essentially, I started working with that organization to, let people know that, this industry was coming and that there was going to be a substantial amount of opportunity for folks to, take ownership and to take a part in this industry that they were previously excluded from. And so I became an economic empowerment applicant, and I started going through the process in Worcester, and I decided I wanted to go through this process as if I was someone who didn't have much knowledge in the cannabis space and didn't have access to a whole lot of means when it came to capital, investors. And so I really took a bootstrap approach. I didn't raise any capital, and I spent every single dime that came into that went into our application and to our process was out of my pocket. And essentially, what that article was about my story and how, despite having connections within the community, despite being a minority, despite having this economic empowerment status, there were still a number of barriers that are present. And within certain communities, certain towns, that having that status doesn't hold a whole lot of weight.
Doesn't help at all?
Not a lot of weight at all. And that's why we're starting to see a lot of communities like Boston, like Cambridge and Somerville step up to the plate.
Do you think that's going to happen in Worcester?
I think they are. I think with Worcester I try to look at everything from a couple of different perspectives, and I think when you think about municipalities, they're more so concerned with how do they integrate cannabis into their communities in a safe way that doesn't ruffle any feathers, right? And a lot of times when it comes to equity, it's an afterthought, and that just can't be the case with this industry.
It's crazy because Worcester is mostly minority, right?
42% of the residents right now.
That's a good number.
Yeah, it was the second largest city in Massachusetts, and we're constantly in the paper as being the up-and-coming city. And for me, I just felt, though, as if I felt we kind of missed the ball because we didn't have these mandates that we're starting to see come into place with Boston and Somerville.
So what's the status right now with your application?
So
you said you did all this on your own so far.
Yeah.
And what I mean, tell us about where you're at right now, but what are some of the difficulties that you've run into that you couldn't do it on your own?
Yeah, so the first difficulty that I faced was, one, you have to get access to a piece of property that's properly zoned. So from day one, I started knocking on doors, talking to landlords, and trying to see if they would be open to having a cannabis establishment within their community. And I actually was fortunate to find one particular location. This is going back a year ago. That's how far ahead of the game you have to be if you want to get a license. And we found a location that was properly zoned. I put down my own money, and I worked out an arrangement with the landlord where I would be able to, pay rent on a discount. And what happened about a couple months later is a big player came into town, and they were within my buffer zone. And I knew from the get-go that I didn't have the manpower to fight them.
Overwhelm them.
So I walked away from that property even before the application process opened up because I knew it was going to be a lost battle.
Too much money was too close to you, and they would rule over your application is basically what.
Without a doubt, and I wasn't going to win that battle.
And you had spent money at this point on the spot.
And this was prior to even talking to the city because I already knew how the game was going to be played.
And in a state where we all talk about the rent's too damn high, the rents are going up.
Yeah, so I cut my losses.
How do you afford that?
I cut my losses, and I actually found another property.
How do you afford that? Is it coming out of your pocket, right?
Yeah. So with that particular property, luckily I knew someone who knew the landlord, and I explained to him my situation, and we were able to work out a discount for that rent. It still was money coming out of my pocket, and it's lost. I had to cut my losses, and so that's what I did. And I was fortunate enough to find another property in another community that I had ties to. And that landlord was willing to work with me as well.
Is that Worcester too, though?
That was in Worcester, yep. And in that particular case, there was another out-of-state company that came in, and I felt as though I had a strong enough application that I could fight them. So that's kind of where we're at right now.
So you're still fighting possibly a bigger footprint coming in and taking away your application.
Well, yeah, I think any city or town that you go to, the bigger cities, you're going to deal with that.
There's a risk, a huge risk here.
Yeah, I mean, it's how it's going to be in these larger.
And so now you're
areas.
paying rent on this new spot, even though you're not open, right?
No. So I mean, it's part of the process. You have to make sacrifices, and that's one of the things when I talk to municipalities is that I understand that they're trying to do this in a very thoughtful approach. But the longer time you take, that's another barrier that you're creating for someone that comes from one of these communities that have been disproportionately impacted, or if you're someone who another thing too. With me, I left my job in order to pursue this. My background's in finance, and I was doing pretty well, but I knew if I was going to go about this without having to pay money to attorneys, pay money to a lobbyist, I was going to have to pay for this out of pocket, and at the same time, I was going to have to do all the work myself. So I left my job, and I said, you know what, I'm devoting 100% of my time to doing this, and I felt we put one of the best applications forward, and I still feel very hopeful that we're going to be successful.
And so now where is it at? Like what's the status within the city of Worcester with your application? Because I read about some of this, and I just want to share it with people and let them know.
So we're just waiting. After you submit an application in a city or town, you usually just waiting at that point in time, and there's not a whole lot of transparency with their process. So
you don't know why they pick you or not pick you.
So I think at this point in time, they're looking at where they're located. And I think we have a very strong possibility of being selected in Worcester. We're very hopeful, but we're also not just sitting put. So I'm also now looking, I'm going through the process now in Boston for another retail location. And in that particular case, I have the support, I have the team, I have investors behind me. And, I feel very good and very hopeful with that application process as well. Although it's completely different than what I did in Worcester, because in Worcester, I really wanted to take a bootstrap approach and see, is this possible? First and foremost, I like to think of myself as an advocate, and I can't go out into certain communities and talk about, hey, there's a possibility for you to get a license, even if you don't have experience in this industry, or maybe you were previously incarcerated. I don't feel comfortable going out to those communities
without doing it.
Without
testing it.
And what I can tell you from what I went through in Worcester, it's hard.
It's really
hard, especially if you don't have access to capital.
If you don't have the money.
If you don't have the money.
What kind of money are we talking about when you need capital? Like what do you really need here?
I mean, so without going, just some of the basic attorney fees, you're probably talking $50,000
Right.
easy, and that's for like a very simple
Retainer.
application. Yeah, retainer. You're not talking about a lobbyist, and then you have to get into, depending upon where you're looking to locate, you have to pay money for rent. That's a first, second, last security deposit. In addition to that, if
And then monthly.
yeah, in a monthly. So those are just some of the initial
And then
costs.
you talk about maybe a lobbyist and
Yeah. And then so that's why I think a lot of folks, if you're coming from a community, you don't have a whole lot of access, try to use a community approach. And that's what I did in Worcester, is I reached out to a lot of the folks that I thought were going to be important advocates on my side. And I sat down and I said, hey, listen, I'm from the community, I have ties here, my family was born and raised here. I think that we can present an application that's going to be strong and sit well with people in the community, because they know we were born and raised here. If there's an issue, you can come and knock on my door. You can call my cell phone, and we'll be here. So I think outside of the money aspect, that's another angle, and that's another way to approach these cities, because I do think a lot of these cities and towns, they want to see the home team win, right?
right.
So when these big players come from out of state, I think they should partner with these smaller operators, and that's one way that they can raise capital.
What, like, you mentioned that and you also mentioned earlier Boston, Somerville, Cambridge are starting to do things differently. What are some of the things that they're doing differently that you'd like to see Worcester and other cities and towns do?
So I can speak to that too, because after that whole experience in Worcester, I started looking at other cities and towns. And one city and town that I went to, because my wife, she's Colombian in Framingham. They're a city on the rise.
That's
now that
right.
they're a city, and they have a pretty big Brazilian
That's
and
right,
Colombian population. So I thought that would be a great opportunity for a minority to come in and create a cannabis establishment within that city. But similar to Worcester, they don't have specific ordinance surrounding the number of applicants that they're going to award to economic empowerments or minorities in general. So what that does, it leaves the door open to interpretation of how important do they care about equity, or what does that mean, saying that you're going to consider in your application process. And lo and behold, if you look at the city of Framingham, I hate to say it, but I don't think they have one minority applicant in their city. And that's unfortunate, because that's a city that I thought had tremendous amount of potential.
That's crazy.
And they have a Mayor Spicer.
Framingham, what are you doing? You're not having any economic empowerment, no minorities ownership in a city that has minorities in it. Like, it's a city. Like, this is what we're talking about, is why should it only be rich white guys? Like, that's really what, and a lot of times it's out of town, international companies now. We're seeing companies from Canada coming in now and taking over this market. Like, we have an opportunity here, and I hear what you're saying. It sounds like we need to set, like, each city needs to say, you know what, like Somerville's doing, we need, a certain number of economic empowerment applicants to get licenses before we even consider any companies from Canada or California or Colorado led by rich white guys.
Or at the very least, they need to partner with the folks from these communities. Somerville is a great example in what they're doing, and the fact that they're looking to do a one-for-one type of system, where they're going to grant a license to a local or minority applicant and then one to a general applicant. And I think it starts with talking with the city councilors in Somerville. Alderman Scott is awesome. I mean, he was one of the people that stood up and said, yes, I'm going to fight for this. And that's what needs to happen with every single city and town, is they need to have someone who steps up and has a seat at the table and says, this idea of equity is not going to be an afterthought. It's going to be at the forefront of our decision-making process. And, when that article came out, it came out about a month ago, and I hate to say that at this point in time, it doesn't look any better. Massachusetts has generated about $30 million in the last 3 months through the legal marijuana industry, and not one single dollar has gone to a minority-owned business or a business that's owned by a woman.
Right. They just announced the first licensing that isn't a rich white guy. Basically, it was a woman, a mom.
Yeah, in
a white
Uxbridge.
mom. But
I think that's great.
It is good. But at least finally they call that a mom and pop, like someone who wasn't already in the system and invested with millions of dollars. 502-501-3477 is our phone number. If you want to comment, you can also leave a comment on our Facebook live video feed. We'll read that as well. But best way is to call in, 502-501-3477. The phone number is right there on the screen. Call in. Leave us a comment. What do you think about this? Do you agree? Do you think that we need to have more local empowerment applicants? Do we need to give preferential status to locals over these international companies? What do you think? I want to hear from you.
I'll speak to one comment actually after I had shared that post yesterday. Is there was a lot of chit chatter, a lot of folks going back and forth on this topic, and one of the comments was that these cities and towns, they don't care about color, they don't care about if someone's black or white when they're granting these licenses. And I stepped back and I thought to myself, that's the problem.
Right. All they care about is one color, green. How much green you have to give to the city. That's what it seems like. It's the highest bidder.
Yeah.
And of course, that's got to be the rich guy.
Yeah. So we need people at the forefront that are going to speak about this, and I know from experience. So I'm biracial, but you look at me, I could easily pass for someone who's Italian, right?
Right.
So I've been at the table where maybe people have felt a little bit more comfortable to not talk about diversity or to, push to the side. And I've spoken up, and it's because of that I know that people are not considering this as a priority like the state wants it to be. And it's unfortunate. And it concerns me because can you imagine what this industry would look like today after $30 million in sales, after progress or lack of progress we've seen with diversity, if we didn't have someone like Shailene Title as one of the commissioners? Can you imagine what the industry would look like right now?
You know what I like too is Tito Jackson came in and said he wanted to see, 10 years from now or whatever, 50% of the businesses to be minority owned in cannabis space. Imagine that. Imagine the difference that would make in this area. We can do that. We could do that if we actually if we had a governor that was behind it, if we had a state legislature that was behind it, if we had cities and towns that were actually, these cities and towns that have issues for years, like Lawrence, and if they're not doing this, you have to throw them out. You have to get a new mayor. You have to get because this is the opportunity. This is like Tito Jackson sees it. He's a former Boston City Council that ran for mayor. He sees this as an opportunity to change Boston for the better. To really, because we talk about how we're going to improve these neighborhoods and how we're going to do better in schooling and this. A lot of this comes down to capital, that people don't have the money, that they don't have the money that Jane Smith has down the street in her mansion, or whoever it is, Joe Smith, you name whoever it is, they have more capital. And this is a way to even the economic score. $8 was the net worth of someone that is a person of color in the city of Boston living in Dorchester, where on Beacon Hill it's over $300,000, $400,000, $500,000. And that's a white person. Like, that's the difference. We need to change things economically, and this is a great opportunity to do that.
Without a doubt, we're talking about generational wealth, and it's that type of wealth that has eluded minorities and people of color
for decades.
So when we talk about equity, it's not simply getting a job or having the ability to be
having some ownership.
Ownership.
I know all about that. I own a small business right now, and I also have this Young Jurks thing, which is kind of a small business in a way. But, my main thing is the dog walking. It makes a big difference to have a ownership in a business that you can grow and really, invest into the growth and have ownership. It's a big deal for people. And especially now with the cost of living going through the roof. Again, our phone number, 502-501-3477. We're the Young Jurks. We have a comment here. Jane Allen says she loves this. She likes our conversation. I'm speaking to Ross Bradshaw, who's an applicant. He's an economic equity applicant for cannabis in Massachusetts and Worcester, and we're talking about some of the challenges. Are there any things that you think that they should be doing at the State House, like to help with this?
I think it's difficult because I think in certain cities and towns in Massachusetts, it's already too late. Not too late, but so they have their caps, right? So we're talking about Framingham, right? They're only going to have, I think, about 5 dispensaries. Well, if you've already kind of pushed this thing of diversity to the side and not made it a priority, then that means that's a city or town that's kind of off the table for now. So we're starting to see that happen throughout all these different cities and towns because, quite honestly, in some of them, they're more concerned with these host agreements and how much money they can extract from these companies rather than being concerned with diversity. So there's little that the state can do in that regard if city or town isn't going to make this a priority. What can they do? It's really up to that municipality and their local ordinances and their zoning. So I think a lot of the changes that we're going to want to see is going to happen through the cities. And a perfect example is what's happening in Boston with the new ordinance that was drafted this past week.
Kim Janey,
yes.
City Council pushed this through.
Applaud her for what she's doing. That is amazing, and that's what we need.
So you like that? I
do. So once again, everything, I take a couple different perspectives on that. One, I think it's great. I think it's necessary. Without that, I think diversity is going to be a struggle in Boston. But as someone who's an advocate who's been looking at a number of cities and towns throughout the state, my concern with that is a perfect example. I was talking the other day with a young woman who was equity applicant in Brockton, and I don't know if you're paying attention to what's going on in Brockton, but it's a circus, right? So she was hoping to put an application forward in Brockton, but I don't know, I probably wouldn't even deal with that right now. So if she can't apply in Brockton and under this new ordinance in Boston, if they're only looking for local folks that are from that community, that's about 51 they're going to have up to about 51 licenses, which is a lot. And if she's excluded from participating in Boston as well, where is she supposed to go? She's locked out of the community that she's from, that she got her designation as economic empowerment because she's from that disproportionately impacted community. But she now also can't go into Boston, which is going to have one of the largest markets. So where is she supposed to go? So that's one side that I see, but at the same time, when it comes to Councilor Janey, I would take her approach where it's, I'm going to take care of my backyard. I'm going to take care of my neighborhood.
If we did that in every city. If we did that, maybe, yeah.
Yeah, and I don't think this idea of, or this need for equity has to be all placed on Boston, and it shouldn't. Other cities and towns like Brockton should step up. That's another great city that we should talk about too.
Why isn't Brockton? I mean, if you're voting in Brockton and you're seeing that your city councilors aren't helping the community get licenses in their favor and out-of-town people and billionaires, why are you allowing this? Why aren't you talking to them? Why aren't you raising hell?
I think Brockton, they're going to have maybe 5 to 10 dispensaries. This should be at the forefront, and advocates should be on the ground in that community. I think we will be through Eon. We'll definitely speak up and try to have a presence in that community. But that's a perfect example for those cities that haven't adopted ordinances yet. This should definitely be at front and center. Springfield, another city, I think they're looking to have 40% of their licenses go to local minority applicants, and that's what we need to see.
That's right. I also want to mention, I think I mentioned it, but maybe not this segment, but April 27th, we have a big event here. It's the Young Jurks 5th year anniversary party from Down the Road Beer Company. It's a Saturday night. We're inviting everybody to come down. You can buy tickets. We've got a Facebook event. You can check it out right now. We've got some confirmed presenters. Mass State Rep, newly elected, Nika Elugado, who's going to be there presenting. As well as someone you mentioned earlier who we love, Mass Cannabis Control Commissioner Shalene Title.
Nice.
And our friend Tito Jackson is also going to be a presenter. And the friends and family of Michael Malta will be presenting. We'll be there and presenting the Michael Malta Activism Award. We're going to have a lot more announcements on this on our Facebook group. Definitely check it out. We have open voting on some of the awards. We'll be announcing more awards there as well. So continue to join that and definitely vote on those. And get your tickets early for that. We're the Young Jurks. We're sitting with a good friend of the show. We're speaking to him about what's going on with equity applicants and cannabis licenses in Massachusetts. I want to ask you about another thing, Ross. There's an issue right now with social consumption. And the way that the state seems to have, or some of the key people who are advising the state on this, seem to be pushing is that social consumption be done very narrowly, and it only be single serving use. Have you heard about this?
Yeah.
And a lot of us have concerns because we've seen some of this language before, and we see it going a place that we don't like, where Big Brother is telling us how much cannabis we can put into our body
and where you can get it from.
Yeah, we can get it. And we also fear, really what we fear is that this is going to kill social consumption, that it's not going to make it competitive with what's out there right now, which is the illegal sessions, the illegal cannabis. I mean, everyone's having these events every weekend, and they're not going to be limiting use. Do you have any concerns? Do you have any comment on what I'm talking about? Or do you not know enough about it to feel comfortable commenting on it?
I mean, from an equity standpoint, that's kind of where my mind's been at for the last year, and where I'm probably going to be for the next 5 years in this industry, focusing on that aspect of it. When you think about delivery and social consumption, I think there's an opportunity for small businesses, or they should have opportunity to get the first stab at it, because I think there's going to be a less cost of capital to get involved in that type of operation.
But the issue with social consumption, that is the way it's supposed to be, and that's the way they're suggested to be set up, which is great. That's what I want to see. But my concern is that it gets sunk by regulations that are too strict.
I think that's definitely going to happen.
Yeah.
Do you think it's not going to happen in Massachusetts?
That's what I'm worried about, especially when we see advocates for like MassCan and other pro-cannabis people. Like, they're the ones pushing this now, and it's like, why are you like? We're supposed to fight, for this end, and the prohibitions fight for that end, and maybe we meet in the middle. But it seems like the folks on our side are just saying, hey, whatever law enforcement wants to do on this, we'll do it, and it's like.
Yeah, I think that's
a problem to me.
Yeah, that's not a solution to this issue at all.
Because it seems like, why would people go legal if it's 5 milligram edibles that we're only able to serve?
So those people that are having underground parties, that's going to happen regardless, right? Especially if you're going to limit it and if you're going to bog it down with regulations and restrictions.
I don't know if it will happen anyways, because I think a lot of those folks, like, even like we talked about, like there's some ones that are semi-legal, but they don't serve cannabis, like the Summit Lounge, where they're clubs. I think a lot of these businesses want to go legal. It's just that if it's not done in a way that they can actually make any money, why bother?
Well, yeah, that's a whole other topic, right? How do you make money in this type of operation, especially if the restrictions require you to acquire from a dispensary? I struggle with that. I think there is opportunity, but time will tell, right? Yeah. I think there's a lot on the table right now as we start to see how these applications pan out and where they're going to pan out. But that's something that definitely should be considered along with delivery too. And that's an issue as well. Especially if you consider certain folks, if they're in public housing, they can't consume in their own apartment. They need a place where they can go.
And I think the other problem with social consumption is they're not even going to allow smoking inside. Like, so, I'm okay with that as long as they allow a smoking side, like outside, like under a tent with some heating. You know what I mean? Like, you can be outside and be ventilated, but be warm. Like, that's what I want to see, some kind of licensing for that.
I mean, look at Colorado. Colorado is still struggling with this whole social consumption aspect of it. I don't think it's impossible. I think it takes people from our state to be a little bit creative, but it's going to take time. Like I mentioned, Colorado, they think they may only have a handful of social consumption places, and it's very limited in terms of what they can do. And they've been up and running for a while now with their recreational market.
It's always going to be a problem here. Like, everyone thought once we legalize, all the problems would go away, but it's just like the beginning of the problems. Yeah. Seems like, didn't it?
Yeah. Well, let me ask you a question. At this point in time, did you think we would have more dispensaries than where we're currently at? I think we're.
Did I think we'd have
10.
more?
Yeah. At this point in time, after the Yes on 4 campaign, after the ballot initiative passed.
I mean, in a weird way, yes, looking back. But I mean, in a weird way, I'm surprised any are open. I remember going back to Deval Patrick when how difficult it was even to get the first one open. Like the stall tactics. But it just, because I guess I'm so pessimistic about what the state does that I'm surprised even that we have 48 of them open now. And you think, like you said,
on the medical side, I'm talking recreation.
Oh, legal. Yeah. How many do we have legal? I don't even know. 5?
Maybe 8 to 10.
10, yeah.
Last I heard it was 8.
Yeah.
But not in the major market, which is shocking when you consider the fact that, $30 million in the state has been generated, but none in Boston, none in Cambridge,
Salem's probably the biggest
Worcester.
market for it right now. Salem, Mass.
There you go. Yeah.
That's the biggest legal dispensary. Yeah, I know. I mean, I guess when you get as old as I am now, nothing surprises you in Massachusetts, especially with the red tape and the slowness and the kind of graft.
Look at the casino right down the street.
All right. I know, the shiny casino that they changed the name on already.
They did?
Since I've been driving in here. Oh, yeah. It was Wynn Casino a few months ago. Now it's Encore.
Yeah.
More scandals in Massachusetts. They're everywhere. I mean, we could do a spin-off show, Scandals in Massachusetts, to just talk about different scandals, current, but also like past. 10 years ago, this state police scandal happened, and this one was indicted. Nicky Pockets. I mean, it goes on and on and on. I mean, we're the place that has, the what was the old mayor of Boston? He's got a nickname forever.
Menino?
No, not Menino.
Oh, you think
the Rascal
way
King?
back.
What's his real name though? I can't. Yeah, Michael Curley. I mean,
you're
come
dating
on.
me now.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's crazy. It goes way back. Never mind the Bulgers and the Kennedys and the and even the Howie Cars.
Well, and that's why
Howie Cars just as corrupt as any of them. Go ahead.
And that's why when you think about Boston, that's why so many folks, at least that I talked to, that are friends of mine that wanted to get in this industry, they were so pessimistic about me getting into this. And now going forward with the application in Boston, they're just like, really? Are you going to, you went through this in Worcester, you've been doing this for a while in this industry, you lived out in Colorado. Now, you want to go to Boston and you want to apply for dispensary. Do you know what you're going to have to deal with in that town? And I understand that, but I still have faith. Maybe I'm just being a pessimist.
No. I'm pessimistic, but I also realize, and I think this was a big thing for a lot of us, decrim medical legal were the first times in my life where I saw like revolutionary change. And it didn't come from the politicians. It didn't come from the politicians saying, hey, we need to do this uncomfortable stuff no one wants to do. Let's shove it down and just wear you out until we get our way. No. It was just the opposite. It was the people coming up and saying, you know what? We're sick and tired of you not doing what we want, and we're going to actually change the law ourselves. So, with that pessimism, a lot of it's broken for a lot of us because we've started to see that when we focus locally, we can actually get shit done. And what happens in our backyards affects everyone in the state, and then it affects everyone in New England, and then everyone on the East Coast, and everyone nationally. We're like the leaders on this once we do something like this. And, so cities and towns, same thing. What Somerville and Boston does in Cambridge, hopefully we'll go to Worcester. Hopefully we'll go to some of these other cities and towns we're talking about.
I hope so.
And we're talking about all this a lot now because in every city and town. Last week we had a forum. We had 3 people from 3 different cities and towns talking about their fights in their local towns. And we'll continue to do that. If you need help or support in your local town, always hit us up because we're here for you. We want to, get the word out, and that's what we're doing today, Ross. Ross Bradshaw, I want to thank you so much for coming in. We haven't even mentioned what is the name of your company, your application.
Probably should have got to that in the beginning. New DIA. So DIA being acronym for Diversity in Action.
New DIA. I like that. New DIA. It's like idea, new DIA.
Yep, and then also Spanglish, DIA being day, so a new day in cannabis, a new way of going about
this industry.
It's a new day.
Yes, it is. You ever watch that?
I have, yeah.
Oh, I'm doing my New Day thing.
That was a good show, man. They need to bring it back.
Yeah, I love New Day, the New Day on WWE. Wrestling, too. I want to add to Seuss's over at watching an NXT show in Boston tonight. I hope it's fun, Ed. I wish I was there with you. I love wrestling. Do you watch any of the WWE? No, not anymore.
Nah, back in the day, like when Undertaker and Kane, The Rock,
John,
obviously.
do you know John Cena?
So I stopped watching right when he came on the scene.
I did, too. And then I found out like 5 years later, I was like, holy crap, that's John Cena, because I knew him growing up.
You did?
Yeah,
He's from Mass, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's one of those weird things where you realize someone you knew growing up is now famous, and they've been famous for a while, and you didn't know about it. My cousins were hanging out with him the whole time, too. It's funny. But anyways, our phone number again is, what is it? Oh, no, I know what it is. 502-501-3477. We're the Young Jurks. We're on Disrupt Boston every single week, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. We're about wrapping that up now. We have Calvin Feliciano. Pretty sure Monica Cannon Grant's going to be here. No, not today. Well, Calvin's here. Calvin Feliciano be hosting the next show, Activist Hour. You'll watch it on Violence in Boston on their Facebook page or Disrupt Boston. They'll be coming up at 8 p.m. Their show's always great. A lot of listeners. We're always happy to have them here as well. I want to thank all our listeners, all our supporters. I want to thank all the people who've been voting for us, the Young Jurks, on the Any-Can poll that they're holding. We do have another phone call. We'll take the call as we're heading out here. We're waiting to take this call. Here we go. Not yet. We got him? Oh, 1 second, he's telling us. So we'll there we go. We'll take this call. Who's on the phone?
This is Troll J. Simpson checking in.
How did I know that?
That's a good
How
name.
did I know that? I could predict it. Go ahead.
I am. I just want to know for the public. I want to slowly make this connection because you've been dodging it for weeks now. You knew John Cena, you said, right? Did I just hear you say that on the radio?
Yeah, I knew him, sort of. I actually know his brother's better than him. I faintly
some
know
holes
him.
in the story.
Well, yeah.
Wow, exactly.
But you know what?
But
The thing is, when I was wrestling, right? I was a high school wrestling coach, and I was wrestling.
Watched his jockey at one point.
No. Listen, this is exact story. I was wrestling John Cena's brother. I was a high school wrestling coach. His brother was in high school. Good kid. I know him really well. And I coached against him during the season, but I would always practice with him. He's a real tough kid. And I was wrestling another coach, and I actually got slammed and hurt. And John Cena was in the other gym lifting weights for college football. He never wrestled. He played football at Springfield. And John and his brother actually carried me in my car that night when I broke my back. And they kept suggesting an ambulance. So that's like the last time I ever saw John Cena in person. And I really didn't know him that well, but I knew his brothers and his family. So go ahead.
I'm just saying, with all these famous connections you have, I'm waiting for you to tell us where Tupac is, because I saw a video and they were alleging that you were involved and knew where he was, and I'm just making this connection again. That's all I want.
Oh, he's in Cuba, man. He's in Cuba.
All right. Peace out, brothers.
Is that all you're leaving us with today? You just want to know the celebrity
actually.
tidbits? You don't care about.
You said John Cena. I'm like, are you kidding me? This guy knows John Cena, and he's helping hide Tupac? What is this?
Yeah. Well, I just hope I don't get arrested on the way home for giving away any John Cena stuff away, because his brothers are police officers now.
Oh, that's great.
No, they're good guys, all of them. I gotta say, knowing the Cena family, they're exactly how John portrays it. He's not acting, I don't think. He's like that guy. He's just a good guy and does a lot of good work. Good people, good hard-working people.
That's hilarious.
So anything else? That's it. You just want to talk about the celebrity, salacious stuff. That's it. You don't want to talk about.
I needed to make that connection. I needed to make that connection for the people. I feel the people deserve to hear that.
We're talking about economic empowerment with Ross on the cannabis issue. What do you got? Anything for that, Troll J. Simpson?
Yes. Well, actually, yo, Ross. It's good to see you, because I just saw that you befriended me on Facebook, and I'm like, where do I know this cat from? But what do you? Any thoughts on Janie and her recent proposal in Boston on the Boston City Council? She wants to sort of empower the council and people who have been historically impacted by the war on drugs, and people of color from the communities to have licenses.
We just did kind of answer that.
I'm all for it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you should have been listening, Calvin. Said all you were listening to the John Cena stuff. See?
Exactly. I tuned in really quick and I heard that part.
You gotta think with John Cena.
He basically said he likes it all except like someone from Brockton who was an economic empowerment. Got shut out of their own city, and now they're not going to be able to go to Boston because they're not a resident there.
That's rough. No, I mean, we got to figure it out, but I think everywhere should have empower local people as much as possible.
Exactly.
Oh, yeah. I think from the get-go, the state should have taken that power out of the local municipalities' hands, if they could have. I don't know, based on the regulations, if they could have, but that would have been awesome if the state could just determine who they wanted to have applications.
I agree. Totally agree.
But it's definitely done with the right intent, and it would be good if every city and town did that instead of what they have now.
Yeah, she stepped up big time, and hopefully other folks do as well.
Yeah, she's trying, because the Walmarts of weed are licking their fingers, getting ready to come here. And we got to stop them. We got to get local people, small businesses, people of color, people who've been in jail for marijuana. We have to empower those people.
Or at least get them to invest in the local people. That's the other way to go about this, but, time will tell.
And even poor white people, too. Because, I know a lot of poor white guys have been busted, too. And I always want to make sure that they know they're not being left out of this either. We're just saying that people who have suffered, if you've suffered as well, then you should be included. And it doesn't, we definitely, I want to see people of color get that preferential treatment. I'm saying that definitely because I think they got screwed over the most. But
no, I agree.
Local people need to be covered.
She wants to come on, FYI. She wants to come on. We'll talk about it after the show.
I would love to get her on.
That would be awesome.
She'd love to come on the 23rd. Yeah, she wants to come on the 23rd. Let's do it. Just let me know. We'll talk after.
I'm book it, bro.
So can I one serious question?
Yes.
You think John Cena would invest in me?
You're
the connect. You're his best friend.
He ain't answering my call. I don't even think his brothers are answering my call anymore.
Oh, come on,
Let's be serious.
Let me down.
Yeah, bro. Cannabis is. Yeah, I don't think they're gonna touch cannabis. John Cena's making $50 million a year. I don't think he wants to touch that right now.
Jesus, $50 million a year.
Maybe later. We'll see.
right.
You know, when his body really starts hurting, maybe.
All right.
502-501-3477. When he starts to slope
Peace,
down
y'all.
in his career, that's when he'll be like, oh, cannabis. Like, is that what they all do now?
Pretty
All the
much.
Hollywood stars and athletes, when they're on top of the world, when they're Tom Brady, they're like, oh, I can't talk about cannabis. All of a sudden, they slip down a little bit, and they're like, oh, I need some cannabis. I got to get in the business of cannabis.
Mike Tyson, was it Joe Montana?
Yeah, they all do.
Yeah.
But with the Young Jerks, we're out of here. We're done with our time. I thank Ross Bradshaw again for coming in tonight.
Thank you for having me. It's been a long time.
It has been. Thank you. Anything you want to leave us with on economic empowerment or any advice to anyone? What do you want to leave us
We
with?
just got to hold people's feet to the fire. Let's make it happen here in Massachusetts. It's been a long road, but we're getting there. I think we'll get there. We got good people at the helm, and we can make it happen.
And I want to thank Calvin for calling in. Calvin Feliciano, Troll J. Simpson, if you don't know. We also had another call, too. I'm not even remembering who it was, but I want to thank them for calling as well. And I want to thank our guest earlier, Modar, Dr. Mohammed Dar for Congress. Modar, check him out. He was very impressive today. And I want to thank AnyCan. We're really excited about this partnership. We will see you at AnyCan March 22nd and 24th at the Heinz Convention Center. And we'll also see you in April at our huge event here at Down the Road Beer Company. Definitely check that out. We can't wait. We can't wait to see you all in person. If you listen every week, you got to come down on April 27th. It's a Saturday night. We're going to have some amazing people here, and we want to meet you in person. So please do come down and check that out. We're the Young Jerks. We'll see you next week. I think I'm going to take next week off. We're going to have a special show. My girl Carmelita is going to be covering, hosting. I think she's going to be with Rocco Costa. Animal behaviorists are going to have a special show next week, so definitely check that out. We're the Young Jerks, checking off. Check it out. Again, thank you so much. Activist Hour coming up right now at 8 p.m. on Disrupt Boston. Stick around. We'll see you then next week. Bye.
I'm a simple man, don't wanna complicate ya.